Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I declare this agenda briefing meeting open at 6 p.m. And it's being held on Wajag Noongar Budja. I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and I thank all past and present members of the community that have supported the city to better understand and value Noongar culture within the city of Wanneroo. I invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we thank you for blessing our city, our community and our council. Guide us in all our decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity, wisdom and honesty. May we show true leadership and be inclusive of all and guide all of the city's people and many families to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask this in your name. Amen. Please note that the audio-visual proceedings of tonight's meeting will be live broadcast online with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. The broadcast of the proceedings of the meeting can be accessed live and on demand through the City of Wanneroo YouTube channel. Attendances are as per the record, and I note that we have one councillor on maternity leave. Thank you. Apologies and leave of absence. Well, Councillor Wright is not on a leave of absence tonight. Welcome back, Councillor Wright, from your trip. I hope you're feeling very refreshed. Deputations. Deputations must relate to a report on the current agenda briefing agenda. A deputation is not to exceed 3 speakers in number, and only those speakers may address the council members. Speakers of a deputation will collectively have a maximum of up to 10 minutes, depending on the number of deputations received, to address the council members unless an extension of time is granted. A deputation is to be in the form of a statement and no debate or discussion on the matter is to occur. Questions from council members relating to the subject matter should be reserved until the administration has presented on the relevant report during the meeting. However, a point of clarification by a council member on a specific statement may be permitted. You will be notified by the ringing of a bell when you have 1 minute remaining of your time. When your 10 minutes has been reached, the bell will ring for a second time. Public questions are not heard at an agenda briefing meeting and will be heard at an ordinary council meeting. The following deputations have been confirmed, and each deputation has 10 minutes to address the council members on their nominated item or items. Please keep in mind when making your deputation. Our first deputation is from Karen Richter on the Draft Biodiversity Plan 2026 to 2030. Consent to advertise. Karen Richter, would you like to just take the podium and give us your surname? Thank you. Oh, give us your suburb. Thank you.
Is that good? Okay, sorry, I just need to get everything sorted here that I don't confuse myself. So, good evening. My glasses off first. Good evening, Siome and all the councillors, also the administration of City of Wanneroo. I first of all want to congratulate the environmentals and sustainability team of City of Wanneroo to have established such a good local biodiversity plan. It is a draft, and you can see that there's been significant, extensive work done for the mapping of, to actually form the basis of this plan. I can just imagine how long it would have taken. Without that mapping information, you cannot have a good plan. So let me go ahead. Okay. I'm here to highlight a critical conflict between the identified local biodiversity plan actions and the active expansion of the Dundebar industrial area. I know that the local biodiversity plan encompasses the whole of City of Wanneroo. I'm not very familiar of the developments within the whole of the City of Wanneroo. I just had a look what is happening in the Dundebar industrial area because I'm very familiar with all the properties there. The draft local biodiversity plan sets clear actions to protect, restore and conserve our local natural areas. Yet right now in Neerabub, high priority ecosystems are facing large-scale clearing. The ongoing resource extraction and industrial subdivision of lots, including the city's own land holdings and projects like the proposed Neerabub Resource Recovery Precinct, are actively destroying the exact biodiversity the city claims it wants to save. Neerabub contains vital remnants of native vegetation, including critical foraging habitats for the endangered Carnaby's black cockatoo and sensitive zones bordering the Nangara groundwater system. So if you would like to go along, you can have a look on page 41 of the briefing agenda. So I made it easier for you that you can understand that this is not thumb-sucking from my side. So if you have a look at the area, it is southeast Wanneroo. That is the area that I'm talking about. The northern part of this area, that is where Neerabub Industrial Area lies. That is where Neerabub is situated. So lot 600, just to give some context, lot 600 on Trandos Road is City of Wanneroo owned, and that is where the planned Neerabub Resource Recovery Precinct is going to be built. Then we've got lot 9,100. A tender went out exactly a month ago. It is directly west of the Mather Conservation Park. It is a lovely piece of vegetation. Unfortunately, also the City of Wanneroo owns this piece of land. Unfortunately, quite a few years ago, with the lot just, again, west of it, lot 9,003, have actually been granted a clearing permit, and that was all for that extraction of limestone and sand. So that has already been cleared, a lot of lot 9,003. There is still vegetation that is actually bordering Barbagello Raceway, and then the adjacent lot 600, that is very good quality vegetation. Lot 9,100 is also a piece with excellent vegetation. So these three areas are owned by the City of Wanneroo. Now, lot 600 Trandos is actually situated in the Karrakatta Complex Central and South. Lot 9,100, lot 9,003, Mather Drive is actually situated in the Cottesloe Complex Central and South. So, if we go to page 42, table 7, the priority of the Karrakatta Complex Central and South is critical, marked in red. The Cottesloe Complex Central and South, high. Okay, then we now realise, if we go to page 45, there's a map with the different priorities of the different local national areas, and it is lot 600, lot 9,003, lot 9,100, all contain priority 1. That's our highest priority local natural area. And then we could go to a map that only has, so it's page 86, figure 16B and figure 16C. It only contains the southeast Wanneroo area, that map, and there you can see a bit clearer that through priority ranking of the LNAs. And like I said already, that these three properties are going to be cleared. Figure 16C gives you the ecological linkages and the nature links. So the Flynn Drive upgrade is going to result in clearing of quite a bit of native vegetation alongside that regional east-west ecological linkage. The Neerabub Resource Recovery Precinct, the northern, lot 600, is also lying in a linkage, and it is going to fragment vegetation alongside that ecological linkage and the nature link. So let me just carry on, just my words. Clearing these areas for industrial development completely undermines the city's conservation strategies. A biodiversity plan has no integrity if its action plans are consistently bypassed to clear priority natural areas and prepare industrial lots for sale. I urge the Council to stop treating environmental preservation and industrial expansion as completely separate silos. I formally request that the final local biodiversity plan includes strict, legally binding overlays that protect designated high-priority conservation pockets within the city of Wanneroo. Do not allow future structure plan amendments to strip away our remaining native bushland. We need genuine protection, not just administrative plans. Now, this is nearly the end, and I've decided if I have more time, I'll talk a bit more about these administrative plans. We can go back to the agenda. On page 89, there is a table. It's called Table 19, the LBP, or the Local Biodiversity Plan actions. I've just taken a few out from there. Action 1.4, prioritise local natural areas, in particular to wetlands, vegetation within our near proximity to ecological linkages, and identified vegetation with critical priority vegetation complexes for retention and restoration. Action 1.5, advocate for retention and conservation of priority LNA identify within or in proximity to ecological linkages at all stages of the planning process. Then we can go to page 91, action 2.3. Undertake substantial restoration in priority city-managed local natural areas, especially in critical or high-priority vegetation complex areas and ecological corridors. And then I'm going to jump to page 95, action 5.7. Strengthen and formalise internal procedures and processes for environmental and sustainability consultation for planning and city-managed projects, as well as collaboration between service units with environmental and sustainability teams. Engage environment and sustainability officers in early and subsequent stages of all city-managed asset planning, development and delivery. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Richter. We now go to Mr. Kayakob to give his deputation, and that is on item 4.3, 4.4 and 4.8 and page 7.3, understanding that item 7.3 is a confidential document. There are no public documents on this at this point in time. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Kayakob.
I understand. Thank you, Madam. Good evening, councillors, Madam Mayor, Mr. CEO and staff. Michael Kayakob, Tandara Fairway Tapping. Item 4.3 on the agenda this evening, the draft active transport plan. The policy implications. All pathway projects contained within the plan have been prioritised in accordance with the city's pathway policy, the policy. Active transport means everyday trips to work, schools, shops, community destinations. Councillors, please, before you approve anything under this agenda item, consider the pathway policy first. The policy is heavily weighted to your dual-use paths, and that's what I see in this item. As soon as your administration sees the word pathway policy, it means dual-use path with a state funding contribution. Most of you received my correspondence on the 12th of December, 7th October and 24th of October 25, infrastructure and footpaths in Tapping. I spoke to my ward councillor on the 7th of October 25 for 33 minutes, arguing our solution to the Tapping Primary School parking issue, non-existent paths, unused dual-use paths and doubling up existing paths as the promise to bring the footpath policy to the first available meeting after the election caretaking period. It never happened. But we keep having ride and walk days to school. We keep having the city car prowling and congesting the tapping streets in a child zone when all attention should be on pedestrians and the road, fining parents for poor parking, and still no policy review or parking resolution. I'm interested in the lack of capital works and maintenance in our area, and I'm interested in the children, the adults, the parents, the grandparents, the visually impaired and our disabled community being able to navigate our community safely to the schools, the bus stops, local parks and shops, and they're not using the dual-use paths to do this. Please review the policy first. It's discriminatory, promoting state policy and ignoring grassroots local government community footpaths. The next part is 4.4 underground and overhead power within the city. And again, who pays? It's the ratepayers again, councillors. Western Power should underground all its own power assets. This item has the potential to subject more additional costs upon your residents, over and above the GRV increase and rate increases, as well as the increased borrowing rates and the cost of living increases we're all suffering. There's a significant interest in the state government's TUP initiative. By whom, councillors? There's been no consultation. How do you know? Which require contributions from local and state governments. That's ratepayers and taxpayers. That's a double tax. As well as residents for the cost of underground power infrastructure. Those ratepayers pay again. That's a triple tax. For an essential service that's the responsibility of the state and Western Power. And the recommendation is that request the Mayor and Administration to continue to advocate on behalf of the residents. But I can't see any consultation to guarantee that we've seen the residents and understood what they require. There has not yet been any community engagement completed at this stage. Should the city decide to partake in the RUP or the TUP, there will be the need to engage in the community to seek their support and contribute financially to the project. Well, I would consider that should be done first. By then, the decision has been made to put your hands in the ratepayers' wallets again. Unacceptable. No one has asked the affected, or from what I can see, no one has asked the affected or the local government region if they wish to pay $120 to $140 million, which is what I've gleaned from this report. Advocate for the state government and Western Power to cover their costs. It will save them on the maintenance, the power loss to the atmosphere, the power outages and providing longevity. Please, councillors, represent your ratepayers and not the state and the corporates. Point 4.8, which is the Wanneroo Trotting and Training Club lease. Your approval says, Council authorises the Chief Executive Officer or a nominee of the CEO to negotiate terms. But there's an existing lease that's been operating in the past and operating successfully. The agenda states, the final draft ground lease documentation based on the city's templates and reviewed by the city's internal legal section, incorporating the agreed central terms as outlined in the report, has been presented to the WTTC and agreed in principle. And the comment in the report is administration recommends the proposed lease to the WTTC. As outlined in the current report, the site is considered to operate effectively under the prior lease, and the new lease will maintain that arrangement. The proposed lease incorporates provisions that will ensure the responsible management of the site during the new term. So why is the CEO or the delegate to negotiate terms when the draft has been negotiated and the report contains no reasoning for this action? And how will council know what additional terms have been entered into without calling for a council approval and inspection prior to applying the common seal? Or this may be a typo in the report, I really don't know. And my final point this evening is on the MRC waste to energy tender, and I do appreciate that it's a confidential item. And I believe that this is in regard to Wanneroo and Joondalup's actions over the exemptions and the transport of waste to the incinerators in the southern suburbs. That's a pile of tonnage lost from the NRRP calculations on which the administration is relying on. Lost to decade-long waste agreements for the waste to energy in the south. Your NRRP version 2.3 report tells you do not have enough waste and you need to import, let alone losing Stirling's waste as well. Councillors, you need to seriously consider the city's financial position, which I'm sure you'll do. Missing signing up for the MRC discounts for bulk rubbish services to the waste to energy south of the river is a certainty for increasing costs to your... Missing signing up for the MRRC discount for the bulk rubbish service to the waste to energy south of the river is a certainty for increasing costs to your ratepayers. The NRRP at the moment is a gamble. You have lost Stirling's waste and the NRR feedstock tonnage is slipping away, meaning more imports, probably from Geraldton, judging by the NRRP report that you've all been provided with. That's no saving on emissions or transport costs, councillors. Do not impose years and years of additional costs to ratepayers by gambling with our funds on the hope that the NRRP will be approved. A bulk discount is a better value than a gamble with ratepayers' funds. The federal government's advertisements say chances are you're about to lose. Think, this is a bet, do you really want to place? What's gambling really costing you? And we know all the other catchphrases that they use. And the MRC's latest tender is for e-waste recovery and PV modules. That's another service and waste volume that we're losing from the NRRP. Councillors, please consider this item extremely carefully. Thank you very much, councillors. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr Kirkhope. I understand Ms Martin wishes to give a deputation this evening. If you'd like to take the podium and just give us your name and suburb you live in. Thank you, Ms Martin.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I welcome the City of Wanneroo's draft Biodiversity Plan 2026-30 as a positive step towards stronger environmental governance and accountability. Linking biodiversity outcomes to the goal of a well-governed and managed city reflects a commitment to transparent, evidence-based decision-making. To ensure the plan delivers measurable results, the city should set clear targets, publish annual progress reports in accessible language, and embed biodiversity mapping and protection requirements into all planning decisions. Ongoing support for local stewardship groups is also essential to maintain community involvement and caring for natural areas. Importantly, the plan must recognise and respect First Nation knowledge and connection to country. Collaboration with Whadjuk Noongar and Whadjuk custodians should guide ecological restoration, land management and cultural heritage protection. Integrating traditional owners' understanding of seasonal cycles, water systems and land care practices will strengthen both environmental and cultural outcomes. By combining good governance, community partnership and First Nation knowledge, the city can show that protecting biodiversity is not only a policy goal, but also a shared responsibility and important legacy for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Just writing a few notes, sorry. Okay, I would like to... Are there any other deputations coming from the floor? If there are no further people that wish to do a deputation, I now move on with the agenda briefing, and I'd like to welcome Emma Wollaston, who is our new Director of Corporate Strategy and Performance. Welcome to the team. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're able to bring on. I think you're going to have creative, imaginative and wonderful outcomes for our city, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens over the next few years. Welcome, and just feel embraced by us as a community. Thank you. Item 4, reports, planning and sustainability. Mr Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'm presenting two reports on behalf of Planning and Sustainability this evening. The first being our draft local biodiversity plan, which has been the subject of a couple of deputations this evening. Council may recall last month the draft environment and sustainability strategy was adopted as a single overarching strategy, which is intended to be supported by a number of different strategic action plans to respond to its three priority areas. The draft local biodiversity plan is one of the action plans and responds to the strategy's priority area to provide cooler, greener communities. In addition, the plan also supports the Council Plan Strategic Goal 2, a sustainable city, and the Council Plan Strategic Target of by 2035 there will be an increase to 40% of the amount of protected, restored and conserved natural areas, as well as additional urban greening to support biodiversity. As part of this council round, we're seeking your support to release the plan for public consultation. The second report this evening from Planning and Sustainability is to seek Council's endorsement on a new local planning policy, LPP 4.26, exemptions from development approval. We received 6 submissions during our community consultation period and received some really helpful and constructive feedback, and as a result we've recommended some updates to the policy. I won't go through them as they're outlined in the report, but certainly happy to receive any questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Do I have any questions on item 4.1? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 quick ones. Could Mr Lee confirm that the outcomes of this report will be presented to Council? And also, could I please request Mrs Richter's concerns be included in that report's findings and at that forum? Thank you.
Mr Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, the process that's intended for the draft local biodiversity plan, if the Council does support it later this month, we will release it for public consultation. The outcome of that will be compiled into a report and presented back to Council prior to it being endorsed. So there will be an opportunity for Council to consider comments we received during the public consultation period. I'm quite happy to take Ms Richter's comments received this evening. We can factor that into the consultation process, but would certainly be happy to receive any more detail from Ms Richter. So when the report is available for public comment, there might be a lot more detail she may wish to provide.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 2, it says 40% is the target. What are we currently at? So what's our starting point for us to get to the 40%, please?
Mr Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I'll just find it in the draft plan, but I believe it's 31% of naturally vegetated areas being currently protected. So we'll be looking to increase that by 9% as part of the plan.
Councillor Berry.
Thank you for that. And how will the protected, restored and conserved be measured and then reported back to us so we know we're getting to that 40%, please?
Mr Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'll take the question on notice so I can provide some detail. But one of the initiatives, and it was commented on during the deputation, that we undertook as part of the review or updating the local biodiversity plan is to make sure we've got a really good data set and evidence base on which to measure our current performance and how we'll track going forward. So I imagine it would largely be based in the data and the mapping that we've prepared now and be able to update that over time. But as I said, happy to take it on notice and provide some more specifics.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Councillor Bedworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I jumped ahead. I've just got 2, if that's all right. Excuse me. Just in regards to statutory compliance, it's listed on the report that it's not applicable, but given the plan's clear role in informing planning decisions and the interaction with the state planning policies and DPS2, can you clarify why it's listed as not applicable?
Mr Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The purpose and the intent of the local biodiversity plan is underpinned by various legislation, so things like the EPBC Act at a federal level, the Biodiversity Conservation Act, the Environmental Protection Act, and a lot of the outcomes of the local biodiversity plan will find itself in planning legislation like planning schemes. However, there's not a statutory obligation for a local government to have a local biodiversity plan in itself, and so for that reason, that's why it certainly is an informing document and is reflective of a lot of statute, but in and itself isn't a statutory document. So that's why we've reflected in the report that it's not applicable.
Thank you. Councillor Bedworth.
Just one more, thank you, Mayor. I suppose I'm looking at the role of the EAG. So beyond the advisory role that they provide, what formal governance and reporting framework will Council use to monitor delivery of this plan and ensure accountability for its actions, if you could?
Mr Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So certainly one of the approaches we'll take is to be reporting into the Environmental Advisory Group, as you note. There will also be a structured reporting approach that we'll take, and it will basically depend on the level of strategic priority, if you like, of the actions that are outlined there in the draft local biodiversity plan. So there will be a degree of reporting at a council plan or a strategic level. So actions that directly contribute to the council plan strategic objectives, such as those I outlined in my presentation, they'll be reported through the annual report. That's something that council receives and makes a decision on, is therefore also available for public review and comment. Any local biodiversity plan actions that are captured as part of our corporate business projects or key initiatives are reported through our quarterly corporate performance reporting. Again, that's something that council considers and is a public document for our community to review. There will also be a number of actions that are quite operational in nature. They won't necessarily be something that finds their way into a council document, but they'll be captured through our service unit planning, reporting on the key performance indicators that we include in each year's service unit plans.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Councillor Berry, you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a few more, Mayor, if that's all right. So on page 4, it says the draft LPB is expected to be largely delivered within the existing budget allocations. Can I understand a bit more about that, please? And I'll say what I mean. What actions are actually achievable within our existing budget? What more staff will be needed to implement it? As page 133 says, we maybe might need some more staff. What are the expected costs over the 4 years? And what consultancy costs are expected? You might want to take those on notice, but yeah.
Mr Lee.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yes, I'll take the question on notice and provide what information we can. But what I can say is that we have been mindful of that through the preparation of the plan and finalising the report for Council's consideration. In attachment 2 to the report, we have tried to provide some guidance on resourcing across the range of actions. However, we do also note that some of them are programmed to be undertaken in later years, and therefore they've not been fully scoped, and as a result not fully costed in terms of resourcing or any supporting consultancy. What I can say is, in terms of the actions that are outlined in the plan and in attachment 2, there is quite a number of actions that are already funded and delivered through what we'd consider business as usual activities, and so they'll be progressed with existing resourcing and within existing and anticipated budgets. Others that are identified as being new actions or initiatives, as I said, not yet fully scoped or costed and funded, but through our standard budgeting process, our workforce planning processes, they will be captured and considered annually. We'll obviously consider them as an administration, but then Council will also have involvement in terms of making decisions around workforce planning and budgeting, and if need be, factoring those initiatives into our long-term financial plan. But as I said, I'll take the question on notice. If there's more information I can provide, I will do so. But as I said, we have attempted to provide as much rigour around that as we can for where the document's at in its life and where the actions will fall in the outer years as well.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Councillor Berry.
Thank you. I want to refer to page 134 and it says wetlands. All I really want to know is, will the state government land form part of the 40% target, or is it just council land that's going to form part of the 40% target?
Mr Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, it's state land is captured in the 40% target.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, did you have a question?
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanting to know in regards to the central database that was mentioned throughout the report, can I confirm that this will be accessible through the GIS mapping system? I note that you mentioned a lot around developer or consolidating all the developer reports. Would that be accessible through the GIS mapping around how those reports all link together and actually give you the whole picture of Wanneroo?
Mr Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, I believe that will be the case. I believe it'll be public, but what I might do is just clarify and confirm that, just so I'm not incorrect in my assumptions, but certainly take that question on notice and provide a response for you.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Any other questions? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. In regards to last year's budget, there was a project in regards to urban greening of unused drainage sumps. I'm just wanting to understand, under this new plan, is that something that's supposed to be, I guess, continued, or what's the latest update on that? Because particularly for some of our older areas with the unused drainage sumps, we were looking at turning them into usable spaces for community. So is that something that's still occurring under this plan?
We'll go to Mr Singh for this, but I have been repeatedly addressing this with our assets manager non-stop since 2022. Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I do acknowledge has been raised before, but that project is now listed in next year's budget to do a pilot study on particular sump sites. I think the couple of words been mentioned that disused sumps are currently being used. We have to look at how we can then manage them better or convert them into usable space. So we will be looking at a couple of pilot studies and see if that's possible and what can be done.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Any other questions? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. I've just got one more. In regards to page 95, I believe it was one of the action items in relation to the encouraging the formation of friends of groups. Could we, I guess, clarify and also maybe add on to that action item in regards to better promotion of these groups? I note that a lot of them are run by seniors that don't have expertise in social media and Facebook, and I think that with our new website would be beneficial to actually have a web page for each of the Friends of groups to advertise when their planting's coming up, when they're needing volunteers and who to contact. So I'm not sure if that can be taken on board, as I think it should be the city's responsibility to also help promote these groups as well, in addition to our community directory page.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question. I just want to ask, I believe with all of our reports and plans that come to us this happens, but have we been informed by our local elders with writing this plan? Have they had put input in this biodiversity plan? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. While my team's just clarifying, I was giving consideration to the comment made through the deputation process, and what I will do and confirm for elected members as well is clarify through our community consultation process whether or not we have a specific consultation activity or approach for our First Nations people, and if not, that's something that we'll look to expand within our consultation plan, so I will come back to Council on that. And if I may just confer with my manager here as to whether or not we have had input during the preparation of the plan. Thank you. Just clarifying, Mayor, I don't believe we have as part of the preparation of the plan, because the intention is to engage through the consultation process. So I'll just outline for Council what our approach is through the community consultation process.
I agree, and I think you would agree with me, it would be appropriate to include our local elders within that. I know that's probably a statement I shouldn't make, but we need to do that. Thank you. Any other questions on item 4.1? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking at page 23, and we've got 6 legislative policy and strategic framework. In that framework, it actually makes a statement saying that biodiversity conservation requires a collaborative approach involving the Commonwealth, state and local governments, as well as industry, non-government organisations, private individuals, and the broader community. Each plays a role in contributing to a conservation effort as appropriate in its level. Can you tell me, how do we consult other than with what we're just about to do with the community? How do we actually engage non-government organisations and private individuals and the broader community when we're actually putting this policy or this framework into action?
Mr Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think what might be best is if I take that question on notice and I can outline the different ways we do engage with the different stakeholders. What comes to mind, obviously, is the environmental advisory group that engages community members as well as elected members in the process. But as I said, I think what I'll do is take the question on notice and I can outline the different ways we do engage with the different types of stakeholders outlined in the plan.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Any more questions? Councillor Huntley.
Yeah, I was just going to actually add to that, because that's a very small group and very individualised, and that certainly probably does not go as far as this statement. So it would be good to see how you are going to go across the board to actually make sure that this can be implemented correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor C.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I appreciate the deputation and your comments as well in regards to our Aboriginal elders. So I can confirm that this has not come to Ni Karajini Court. Is there an avenue that administration would use to consult to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander members?
Mr Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. That is what came to mind when I was thinking about it earlier during the deputation, but as I said, I'll take the question on notice and respond to council just so I can give some further thought to how we will engage.
Councillor C.
Thank you for the answer. The conversation around particular trees, particular bushes, particular natives, particular birds is a regular topic at every single Ni Karajini court. They know exactly where they are. There is biodiversity information that they may or may not have shared, which is up to them, and I'll leave that. But can I have to phrase this as a question. So could you please look into having it sent to the members of Ni Karajini Court if there isn't a suitable time frame where the Ni Karajini Court is meeting next? Yeah, because I think we've just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago.
Mr Lee.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yes, happy to do that, and that would be part of the work that we'll look into.
Thank you. Any other questions on item 4.1? If there are no other questions on item 4.1, we go to item 4.2, consideration of draft local planning policy 4.26, exemptions from development planning approval following advertising. Councillors, do I have any questions on this item? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I've only got 2 questions. What monitoring will admin undertake to ensure exemptions do not create cumulative amenity issues going forward? Thank you.
Mr Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. The intent behind the exemptions would be to capture them on a register. In that way, we'll be able to review quite regularly the nature of the exemptions being sought, and then we'd be able to analyse as to whether or not they are still suitable. The policy does have a standard review period of 4 years, but I suspect with the rate of change that's coming through in planning reform at a state level, we'll be required to review it sooner than that. And so as part of that, we'll be looking to obviously update it to respond to any change to state level planning, but then it'll also provide us the opportunity to adapt it if we're finding that there are things that have been exempted that would benefit from tighter control, and equally as well if there are things that we've identified that
There's display at City's admin building, a display on City's website. There isn't many of our community that walk in here every week to have a look on the, admin within our building downstairs. I don't imagine many log on our website on a regular basis, and not many read the paper. We have, with most of our community engagement, relied on social media and Facebook. Why wasn't this particular item advertised in that way for community engagement, please?
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I think I might take the question on notice and just clarify, but and happy to investigate as to whether or not there's opportunity to include social media as part of our standard consultation processes. My understanding at the moment it is not part of it in terms of certainly from a planning policy point of view, but as I said, happy to take that question on notice and give that some consideration.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Smith.
Just a bit of a clarity question. On page 141, there's one submission requested that the display home centre be formalised as an exempt land use. The report says admin agrees and describes them as common, temporary and low impact component. My understanding of display homes was that they're often sold and then a permanent feature. So is my understanding of that incorrect then? I'm just trying to clarify the temporary nature described. Thanks.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Devekis.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. The display home centre is typically a time-limited development approval. So the development is usually approved for the lifespan of the estate, effectively, and to be removed within a certain time period or when the last lot is sold, and usually whichever is the earlier. So they're not permanent installations.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question. On the issue of water tanks in rural zones, I noticed that you'd like to make a modification that exemptions for water tanks up to 100,000 litres in rural zones. But have you given thought to what 100,000 litres actually does for the average family of 4 on a 5 acre or 10 acre block?
Mr. Del Vecchio.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I guess the reason that that's been included is because the scheme already requires a 90,000 litre water tank for firefighting purposes for these lots. And so because it is a requirement of the scheme, we received a submission outlining that as it's a requirement, we need to include it as an exempt development type. And after a review, usually of these rural lots are relatively large. We have standard setback requirements to boundaries and whatnot. So we thought based on that it would be considered a minor work in those circumstances and could be exempt from planning approval.
Thank you, Mr. Devekis. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, on a 100,000 litre tank, 90,000 for fire, which is fine. However, we're not considering the fact that Wanneroo actually has no scheme water in the rural zones. There is no attachment to scheme water whatsoever. So if properties are going to stay rural over a period of time, some of those properties are going to come off their bore water. A 100,000 litre tank has the same area as a 200,000 litre tank. It's just an extra set of rings and a bigger skin. So if it's approved to 100,000 litres, it would make no difference to approving it to 200,000 litres, but a 200,000 litre tank will serve a family of 4 for 1 year. So that will give them 12 months worth of water. 100,000 litres will only give them 6 months of water, unless they're only a couple. On those big properties, there's normally more than 2 people on them. So I'm just wondering whether it is worth considering that be raised to 200,000 litres.
Mr Lee.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Certainly happy to consider that, and perhaps, Councillor Huntley, we can work offline for an amendment or an alternate depending on the precise wording. I think the point also to make is the policy, nothing would prevent a homeowner or resident from making application for a 200,000 litre water tank. They're still within their ability to do so. The intent behind this is just to say that at 100,000 litres you don't require a planning approval, but certainly take your point that if, for all intents and purposes, a 200,000 litre tank has the same footprint and impact as a 100,000 litre, it may be worthy of consideration. So, as I said, we'll happily work with you offline on that.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Any other questions on this? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one question on the last question that was asked. Could we not do it as a footprint as opposed to a litre? Because if you're going to have the same outcome, why wouldn't you just put a square metre footprint in the policy? So whether it's 100, 200, 300, along that it fits within the same footprint, then it's automatically exempt.
Mr Delvecchio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Certainly, we can explore that. Looking at a footprint, I guess the literage has been used as the standard under the planning and development regulations. Also refers to a 5,000 litre water tank. The policy now will increase that to 10,000 litres. Our scheme refers it to a 90,000 litre water tank, and I guess it's more to do with the utility of the tank than the square meterage in total, but the square meterage effectively is the amenity consideration. So we certainly could. I guess we've used it for consistency to match the other planning legislation.
I just have a question. If we were to just do the footprint, there would be no regulation on the height, so therefore there could be risk with building with the height and danger with that. So that's the reason why you've got the litre. Is that correct with the design? Because we could have, if we had the same footprint, we could have 300,000 or 400,000, and that would have the DA, but it wouldn't necessarily be safe at that height with the structure. We'd have to have different structures. Is that correct, Mr Delvecchio?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. I guess it is partly the consideration. I mean, these water tanks are generally come in a certain size and a certain type, and they usually map them out depending on the literage. So we've gone with litres instead of square meterage. So effectively, that's the reasoning for it. And typically, these water tanks are of a standard design as well. So we don't usually find a lot of the very creative designs with the water tanks as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see Councillor Figg has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly back to the display home centres on page 141 again. I understand that developers probably have an incentive to get rid of that display home centre so that they can use that land to sell, or for whatever reason they have in mind for it. But in cases where the developer doesn't, how do we enforce the time limitations?
Through you, Mayor.
Mr Delvecchio.
So the policy has a time limit already set in it. So under the conditions of exemption, there is a time limit from the building permit, the issue on the building permit. So if, for instance, the display home centre went up and then the time limit was reached, generally we would inspect that as part of a query lodged with the city, because it would be effectively compliance action. We could then enforce it through that process, because they wouldn't be complying with the planning legislation being the policy.
Thank you, Mr Delvecchio. Any other questions? Any other questions on this item? If there are no other questions, thank you, Mr Lee, Mr Delvecchio and Mr Brocconi. Mr Singh. Mr Singh, are there any items you'd like to speak to this evening?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We've got 2 items on the agenda from SS Directorate. Reports is taken as read, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. I've got Mr. Barker here to help me with item 4.3.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Are there any questions on item 4.3? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's really about funding. So on page 198, it says that 50/50 WABN grant funds projects. Then we've got federal government active transport funds projects, and then we've got other state and federal government transport grants fund projects, and then we've put together this lovely report. But we don't know how much funding we're going to get. So what is currently listed as great initiatives for the community to read? How many projects in there have actually got the certainty of being delivered?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Mr Singh.
The way we listed these projects, they are based on our best judgment that they're likely to attract grant funding. But most of the grant funding projects are quite competitive. So we apply for the funding, and then if we are successful, then the project obviously receives the grant funding and proceeds accordingly. We did have few successful outcomes earlier last year, I think there were. We had 4 or 5 projects funded through the federal program, and we applied for, I think, 5, and we got 4 of them.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Berry.
So I appreciate that we applied for funding and some got funded, some didn't. Let's assume there isn't any funding and we're not going to get any because we're aware that the state government has withdrawn stuff. I'll go back to how many projects are actually listed in the plan can we fund if we don't get funding contributions from anywhere else? Thank you.
Mr Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. That's the kind of discussion we had before on some other different projects as well that should council consider. They're listing those projects to be fully funded by city's own resources, and if grant funding comes, then resources can be used for some other purposes or other projects. We haven't reached that point. We need to have that conversation with council. Until that council direction is given, we are listing the way traditionally they have been listed.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got a couple. Can you please confirm what key metrics will be used to demonstrate that the plan is increasing active transport and uptake across the city and therefore being reasonably successful?
Mr Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. This is mentioned in Part A of Section 4.1 of the plan. The overall metric for the increase in active travel will be reviewed at the end of 2026 and 2031 census, which is at the start and end of the plan in conjunction with National Walking and Cycling Survey. Regular volume counts are planned over the life of the plan at key nodes across the city that may also be referred to for specific local data, such as data received by the city in the annual Super Tuesday program. Additionally, results of future livability surveys will also inform changes in community perception of city's pathway active transport network.
Thank you, Councillor Bedworth.
Thank you. And just regarding page 197, I note the plan sets out a 5-year delivery programme and it states that priorities may evolve through the budget process. So is there an intended mid-cycle review point or formal mechanism for council to reassess these priorities as growth patterns and transport demands change?
Mr Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. As been mentioned previously, we do have a pathway policy which assigns scores to different pathway projects, including dual-use path and the node network points. They are reviewed annually, and as part of annual review, there is an ability for council as part of long-term financial plan or annual budget to reset the priorities.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Mr Singh. Does or can the city maintain contact with some of the schools that are adjacent to a recently completed shared use or dual path? Because I think that's an example of not having to wait for census data or an annual day. If we maintain contact with those schools, like anecdotally, I could say that Waddington Primary School and Our Lady of Mercy Primary School, both in the South Ward, have indicated stronger participation and use of those paths since creation. So it'd just be good if we could maintain that contact because it builds up our ability to communicate the success of the metrics.
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As Councillor Rowe has outlined, we do have contact with the school. We have active transport and travel smart officer. His primary role is to maintain contact with the school and work with schools to promote active transport.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? I'll go to Councillor Wright, then Councillor Figg. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in regards to our plans and strategies, is it possible for an impact report to be provided formally to council, so similar to our quarterly council plan reports, advising on our actions and targets? Because I know that we never really have any actual measurables after every plan, so this wouldn't just apply to this, but in general, is that something that the administration could look at implementing, so council and the public actually see our movement towards some of these targets and goals?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Can I just clarify, you're asking for all plans or just this particular plan?
This would be for all plans. Obviously, every plan's at their own different timeframes, but from the last plan, I know these go to the working groups, but at a council whole level, we don't actually formally recognise or close off once we finish a term of plan. So, like, from my understanding, I don't know whether we've completed everything from our last active transport plan. So I'm wanting to know, is there like a formal wrap up when the new version comes that actually summarises everything we've achieved, or what still needs to be carried over?
Mr CEO.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I saw Director Singh wasn't making eye contact with me, so I'm assuming that he didn't want that question. It's a very good question. We are doing a body of work. I will take it on notice, but we are doing a body of work at the moment along the lines of exactly what you're suggesting, so that we can close out those plans and strategies as they're completed. So if you can bear with us, we'll respond formally through the agenda. Thank you.
And Councillor Wright, another question.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in regards to e-ridables, throughout the document obviously elaborates that the sole responsibility is the WA Police, not the city. Can I confirm that there's a procedure in place of how the city will deal with community safety concerns in regards to e-ridables? Are we referring residents to a particular web page? Are we actually... I'm just noting that there can be some differences in comments coming out from the city in terms of how residents should treat e-ridables, and I'm noting that obviously we don't want the city to be taking on that burden. So have we got a procedure in place now that actually is quite clear and almost the same response given to residents of how they should treat e-ridable complaints?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have prepared a how to use e-ridables safely, some kind of information, which I don't have full details with me. I'll be happy to provide that information through to council members.
Thank you. I do want to get to Councillor Figg. Just one more, Councillor Wright, before I go to Councillor Figg.
I was just going to clarify that. It was in regards to if a CRM came in from a resident, are we directing them to the place of where they can actually report e-ridable complaints, noting that it doesn't just sit in our system, and obviously the response is, oh, it's not the responsibility of the city. So are we reporting that on behalf of the resident to the WA Police? Are we encouraging residents to do it on their own? What's the mechanism in place at the moment?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, you're right, Councillor Wright. This is the enforcement sits with WA Police for that one. So we do refer any complaints or anything like that. We encourage community to contact WA Police directly.
Councillor Figg.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's actually, my first question's on e-ridables as well. Are there any places in the city that currently have any signage restricting their use?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Not that I'm aware of, but we're happy to investigate that.
I'll just hand it to Ms Thrush there, because she gave me the eye.
Through you, Mayor, we're currently not able to restrict e-ridables in any areas throughout the city due to our public places and local government, local law. However, we are currently reviewing that local law with it going out for advertising this week. And one of the things that we're looking to review is to allow council to make a determination as to certain areas where e-ridables are not allowed.
Thank you. Any other questions on item 4.3? Councillor Figg.
Thank you, Mayor. Just moving to the page over leaf 222 and linkages to the natural environment. So the Yanchep National Park is listed there. Some councillors will know that I'm pretty passionate about pedestrian links to the national park. It refers to improvements to shared path linkages along Yanchep Beach Road, which will also complement access to the national park. Can administration clarify which improvements to shared path linkages along Yanchep Beach Road that refers to?
Mr Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to refer that to Mr. Barker. I think he's got more information.
Mr Barker.
Thank you, through the chair. The initial links will be along the section from Marmion Avenue up to Spinnaker Boulevard that we are, well, plan to improve when we dual the road.
Thank you, Councillor Figg.
Thank you, Mayor. And one more question. Does anything in this plan contain any further provision of pathways that would lead to the DBCA controlled entry to the national park, so along Yanchep Beach Road?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The short answer is yes, but if you need more details, we can provide that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had quite a lot of questions tonight. Is it possible to ask administration to put all the questions and answers in our reports for next week and update the bit, you know, that we normally get the update in, but for everything? Because I'm struggling to keep track of everything. Thank you.
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. We'll consider that an agenda settlement tomorrow. Typically what we do is when we answer a question on the night, that's taken as answered. And then, you know, the questions that we aren't able to answer, we typically document. We can talk about it tomorrow, but it obviously does add significantly to the workload of the administration if the question's already answered. So we can talk about that tomorrow. Is it just for this item?
No, I've struggled to follow on some because there's been quite a lot of questions tonight on many of the items. So to save us all out, maybe asking the questions again in a fortnight if we know what they are and we've got the answers. I don't know if it'd be too hard to do off the recording that we do. Thank you.
Councillor Rowe, you have a question?
I do. I'm going to be cheeky. Mayor, through yourself, just to confirm, it is possible that council members could advise the administration in advance that they have questions on a particular topic. That would be ideal if it's particularly to specifics of a report that's more than several hundred pages in length. It is possible to give advance notice, correct?
Is that correct, Mr CEO?
That is correct, Councillor Owen, and we received many questions in advance of today's meeting, and some of those questions, because the councillor had the answer, they don't necessarily ask them in this forum as well. So, yeah, that option is available.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. Apologies. Again, I usually write my questions in, but I couldn't do it. 48,000 metres in the sky. But I've got two more questions on this one. One was in regards to the mention in regards to the city's maintenance budget for enhanced street and pathway sweeping programs. I'm just curious to know, I think Mr Kayakob mentioned it in his deputation, around the city's maintenance budget for fixing broken footpaths or creating new ones. Is this supposed to increase over time in our LTFP program to either maintain or increase the allocated operational expenditure or capital expenditure for this type of project?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As part of preparation of our annual budgets, we do look at how much new infrastructure has come on board, and we adjust the operating expenditure budget to suit the new infrastructure needs. So that is generally through whether it's a transport network, whether it's footpaths or drainage, buildings or streetscapes, parks, all of that. So we look at how much new infrastructure has come in and how that need to be maintained, how much funding need to be added to the operating budget. Yes, as infrastructure grows, operating expenses grow.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess just in clarification of that, so I'm talking about in terms of the amount of projects. So from my understanding, I don't know whether the footpath program works the same, but for traffic treatments, we do 2 to 3 projects a year. So for footpaths, is that the similar type methodology that we do, or are we actually increasing the allocation of funds, because this is our core business, to be able to get people to and from destinations.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, you would have noticed that through annual budgets, over the time, the allocation for pathway program has increased substantially. Now it runs, recurring program is, I think, just over $2 million for a pathway program. Then after we apply for further funding, grant-funded projects also increase the pathway budget. In addition to that one, a lot of transport projects like new roads do include footpaths. They form part of the road project, not standalone footpath project. So yes, the capital investments in pathway program has increased over the years.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Wright.
And thanks, Mayor. Just my last question was in regards to, in the document it mentions around shifting transport modes, and it used the phrase short-term pain for longer-term gain. I'm just wanting to clarify with the administration what the short-term pain entails. So are we looking at reallocating road space from cars to bikes? Are we looking at removing parking? What's the sort of, has there been any work done on that side of things? Because I'm assuming that's what we're trying to get to as a city to make it greener and everything else.
Mr Barker.
Probably some of all of the above, but I'm hesitant to call it short-term pain, but certainly next year we're planning to do San Rosa Boulevard Safe Active Street, so that's changing the priority in the street to give more cycle and pedestrian priority there. So it's, things like that. Yes, potentially it could be reallocation of road space, but at the moment, yeah, it's just the safe active streets that we're planning.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any more questions on item 4.3? If there are no more questions on item 4.3, we now go to item 4.4, undergrounding of overhead power within the City of Wanneroo. Do we have any questions on that item? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I was looking forward to seeing Mr Chang tonight, but he's not here, so my questions will go to you, Mr Singh. Just reflecting on some of the comments I heard earlier, I was trying to recall what my specific motion on notice was. And just to confirm what's in the agenda, Mr Singh, at page 312, the motion requested that the zone and subsequently State Council advocate for increased state government funding for the TUP initiative. That was correct, wasn't it?
Mr Singh.
Yes, Mayor, that is correct, and that's how we have actioned the council decision from February 2026. We did write to Volga to consider a report at North Zone meeting, which happened, I think, in the 3rd week of April. It has now gone to State Council. We are checking with Volga that when is that going to be listed at State Council agenda. The resolution was very clear from North Zone meeting. They were supportive of the city's advocacy position.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rowe.
Supplementary, Mayor, on page 312, it also mentions a series of suburbs in the established areas that have overground power infrastructure, which includes Two Rocks, Yanchep, Quinns Rocks, Wanneroo, Kundoola, Girraween and Marangaroo. Is it fair, through yourself, Mayor, to Mr Singh, that therefore there is an inequitable standard of power infrastructure across the city, that not every single residential area has the same quality and standard?
Mr Singh.
To you, Mayor, yes, in that sense of comparison, that is correct. And report also mentions that during storm events, most of the operational impacts are in the areas which have overhead power.
Councillor Rowe.
Good. So now that we've established that there is an inequitable standard and that some residents have a higher standard than others, following on from that and just confirming almost what you've already said, Mr Singh, the data clearly indicates that residential areas in established suburbs that have overground power infrastructure are more likely to experience power outages. That's correct, is it?
Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, the report alerts to that one.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Good. Just wanted to get those facts on the record. The other question I had, Mayor, is in relation to page 313, because it's a discussion that Council has had as well about the importance of reducing the financial imposition or impact on ratepayers. Have we received any guidance from the state government in terms of the TUP program going into the future of 20, 30, 40 years if they would still have, under their current criteria, the same expectation that residential properties would cover a third of the cost, anticipating that if we're seeing the projected cost escalations, that figure expected of residents may be completely unreasonable and unfeasible at that point in time.
Mr. Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We haven't asked the question that directly through Western Power, but based on information we received, is that, as outlined in the report, that at this stage, that is the program, and that's where they're looking at participation from residents, local government, and state and Western Power together under that program. So that could change in future. We don't know yet.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other questions on item 4.4, councillors? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to confirm, and it is relating to what Councillor Rose just said, but the costs that are in the report, it says it's going to be spread between 12,500 affected houses. Does that mean each of those houses is seriously expected to contribute over $11,000 each based on the costs in the report?
Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. This report has tried to outline what are the possibilities and what the possible scenarios are. This report does not recommend council to go ahead and sign up to either of the program. This report is suggesting, based on the feedback we received previously, is to undertake proper detailed financial analysis by a business case, which will indicate should council decide to invest in undergrounding power, whether council does it through fully or council does with the help of residents. It has to be done in a fully understood way that which program is better for our residents and for this council. So that work hasn't been done yet. That's one of the recommendations in the report, that work should be done to understand all of those dynamics before council makes a decision which way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other questions, councillors? Deputy Mayor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question, Mayor, to Mr. Singh. I understand that the planning team, through their smart, I forget what the program's called now, but they've just done a big assessment on undergrounding power and the ownership of poles and so forth. Have you or your team had any discussions about this program combining with what they're doing?
Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. No, we haven't gone that far on that conversation yet. We have looked at this one purely based on what the council decision was to look at which program is suitable or which program potentially could be suitable for the city's areas. We have only analyzed that at this point in time. And as council decided earlier this year to advocate that on behalf of residents, that's the work we've been undertaking. But that doesn't mean that we can't consider that. So I'll be happy to have a conversation with my counterparts in planning and sustainability to consider that.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Councillor Berry.
Thank you. I just want to look at it's the financial implications. Funds of 50,000 have been listed in the draft operating budget to engage a consultant to prepare a business case for the feasibility and viability of the city to fund RUP ahead of the TUP. Do we need a consultant to be able to tell us if the city can afford it and if residents can afford it, or is that not something we can do in-house?
Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the specialist kind of work. This came up earlier as well in another reports a few months ago, that we need specialist advice. And that's a work which, given this work doesn't happen on regular basis, city doesn't have the resources or that kind of speciality in-house to deliver that work. So that's why we're suggesting go to a consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other questions, councillors? If there are no other questions, thank you, Mr. Singh and Mr. Barker. We now go to Community and Place with Director Davis. Ms. Davis, would you like to speak to your item on the agenda this evening?
Good evening, Mayor Aiken and council members. There's one item from Community in Place on the main agenda, the tender for bushfire mitigation works, with a confidential attachment, and we'll just take those as read. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any questions on item 4.5? Councillor Berry.
I've got one question and then one bit of the report that probably needs to change. On page 320 near the bottom, it says the current contract expires on the 21st of May. I suggest we might want to change that to expired because it's been and gone. And then my question, it doesn't relate to the actual costs as in the dollar values, but it does relate to the costs in the confidential attachment in regard to just the 12-month contract duration that we can see on page 321.
Should we be going behind closed doors if we're discussing the confidential attachment? I think we'll go back and discuss this when we go behind closed doors because you're looking at the confidential attachment.
I wasn't looking at, I'm looking at actual page 321, I just said that.
Yes, I know, but you're talking about the confidential attachment as well in what you just said.
Okay.
So we'll go, Ms Davis?
If I can potentially clarify, yes, a lot of the financials would be linked to us needing to give that context through information that's in the confidential attachment.
Councillor Berry?
It does not relate to what's in the contract. It relates to what's on page 321. And we've got 12 months, then 5 times 12 months. Is there any benefit and would it be more economical to negotiate a 3, 5 or 6 year quote rather than a 12-month quote? That was my question. It doesn't involve the dollar value.
Ms Davis, are you able to respond to that?
Thank you for your question. This tender process did have 2 separable portions with a 12-month contract and 5 extensions on it, and the evaluation process has been done accordingly, noting that the contractors in this space in Western Australia are limited. So we believe that what we've put in front of you is best practice.
Thank you. If there are no other questions on item 4.5, we now go to corporate strategy and performance and Emma Wollaston and her team. Welcome, Ms Wollaston. Are there any items on your agenda you'd like to speak to this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. I think first up we've just got the regular monthly financial activity statement and warrant of payment, so taking those as read and asking for any questions.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on item 4.6? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Referring to page 337 of the agenda proper, of which some notice was provided, this is the 10th consecutive month where employee costs are higher at a year-to-date actual figure than a year-to-date budgeted figure. And it also appears from my interpretation of the graph that that figure is not closing in terms of the negative variation between the two. At the mid-year review, Mayor, the vacancy rate was adjusted by this council to be more accurately reflective of the city's recruitment and retention practices. So my question is, has the impact of that change started to occur in our financial activity statements, and do we have any expectation that that gap will close as we approach the end of the financial year?
Ms Wollaston.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So the information that I have is that we are continuing to see a higher than anticipated employee retention rate, and we're further reviewing the assumptions for the 26-27 budget to make sure that it's both that it both appropriately reflects likely experience based on what we've been seeing, based on recent actuals. Would you like to?
Yeah, Councillor Rowe.
And just supplementary, I understand that the administration has indicated in their explanation what it's been offset by. Can we have confirmation in several weeks' time if any of the negative variance or any of the additional cost is due to implications of the enterprise bargaining agreement that was signed off on, rather than the temporary personnel and some of the other matters that are referred to in the dot points. It would be good to get that clarity, noting that, as the CEO has confirmed, there are other enterprise bargaining agreements that are underway, and we would need to be able to understand the potential cost implications of those based on our real data.
Ms Williston.
Yes, thank you, through you. Absolutely, we'll take that one down.
Thank you. Any other questions on item 4.6? Councillor Berry.
Thank you. My questions also relate to page 337. We've got an overtime expense of 290k, primarily driven by waste services, but a couple of pages before that, we've got waste services of doing better than budget by 1.3 million. Does that overtime expense get allocated to waste services as a service unit?
Mr Coetzee.
Through you, Mayor, yes, it does.
Councillor Berry.
Thank you. And my last question relates to the annual leave revaluation. Is that annual leave revaluation due to increase in wages under award rates, or is it due to the increase in the enterprise bargaining negotiation that's already gone on? And further to that, before we get more increments, are staff encouraged to reduce their annual leave balances by taking leave in a timely manner? Thank you.
Mr Coetzee.
Through Mayor, yes, the leave revision is done across the total portfolio. And in terms of leave management, that is the active KPI of all managers to look at the reduction of leave over a period of time, since it is clearly an incremental cost if it's not managed appropriately from year to year as well, based on increases.
Thank you. Councillor Bedworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one question, thanks to my learned colleagues on the other side of the chamber stealing my thunder again. Mine refers to page 342, 343, that sort of area, in regards to capital expenditure. I note it's tracking at just a smidge under 81% of the revised programme as at the end of April, with several timing-related variances granted. But are you confident that the remaining projects can be delivered in the final 2 months of the financial year, or is further carryover anticipated?
Mr Singh, take the microphone.
Thank you, Mayor. The simple answer is yes, a lot of them will be delivered, and we are making very good progress in delivering Capital Works program. The adopted Capital Works program was $137.5 million, which included 334 projects across the whole program. The revised budget at the moment in Capital Works program, based on the changes throughout the year, is sitting at $145 million across 360 projects. So 26 projects have been added during a year. The forecast expenditure is around $133 million, which we expect to be about 92% of the revised budget and 97% of the adopted budget. So that is a pretty good outcome for the Capital Works program, given that there are a number of projects which are multi-year projects, so they will continue into the next year. So there will be some of those, and some of the projects which are in transition into new year will be carried forward. And we're expecting the carry forward to be around $6 million, which to the size of the program is expected around that number.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Staying on page 337, bullet point 3. So it says in there, overtime expenses were higher by 290,000, primarily driven by waste services, planning services and finance due to higher than anticipated work volumes and leave. And then furthermore, community events overtime is higher due to event scheduling. So that there's no figure there. So could we have a number there, please? And I will be tracking that number with the numbers that come through the FACE committee, because I don't recall a number, as I've just added it up, that would be that big coming through FACE committee. So if I could just have some clear, there may be an explanation for it. So if I could just have those numbers worked out and provided, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on item 4.6? Councillor Figg.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking at page 342, the capital changes. 3 down, 3 dot points down, 004283, the Heath Park Sports Amenities Building. It speaks of $10,000 additional funds required to complete works identified as part of the defects liability inspection by the city. And I'm wondering why during a defects liability inspection, bringing up defects, that the city would then have to pay for those.
Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. During the defect liability period, sometime we need to make changes which we identified should have been done as part of the original build to make it work better. So they are the minor things which identified, not necessarily contractor's fault. That is basically to make the building more functional in that sense.
Any other questions on item 4.6? Councillor Seif.
Just a reminder that at the last meeting, the community did ask a question about the ratio between administrative staff and field staff in the waste industry, and it was a ratio of 1 to 2.9, I think. Just a confirmation that those answers will be in the minutes.
Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll check that one. I think that question was asked at Waste Avoidance and Resource Recovery Committee. We provided a response. Not sure that was asked at OCM. If it was, definitely we'll provide that information through.
Yeah,
Councillor Seif.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I asked literally exactly the same question which was a closed session, and the community just happened to ask the same question themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other questions on item 4.6, councillors? If there are no other questions on item 4.6, we go to item 4.7, the warrant of payments. Any questions on the warrant of payments? If there are no questions on the warrant of payments, we now go to item 4.8, proposed lease to Wanneroo Trotting and Training Club Incorporated over a portion of reserves 19545 and 34616. Do we have any questions on this item, councillors? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I've only got one. Has there been any changes, because it doesn't say in the report, and renegotiation that contributed to this lease renewal not being ready on the 29th of March? Because to me, if it was just going to be rolled over and kept the same, they could have had their new lease in March. So has there been any changes that have been negotiated? Thank you.
Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Berry. No, I don't believe there have been any material changes from the arrangement they had before. There would have been some changes just in terms of the underlying template document that would have changed over the last 5-6 years or so. But I should note the old lease had a holdover provision, so it wasn't as if they expired and they had no lease. It continued while this new lease was being finalised.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. I think Councillor Bedworth had his hand up first. Councillor Bedworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got one question on this one that hasn't been asked already, thankfully. This is quite a general question, but I think this particular item brings it to the forefront of my mind in regards to peppercorn leases generally. But I see that this particular one has had successive leases over this site for a number of years. And I'm wondering, do we have a policy position or a trigger point at any point where the city reviews this and tests the market value of the land and seeing if we still get appropriate outcomes in regards to what we're doing here?
Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. Look, it's a fair question where a lease has been on a site for a period of time. I guess there's a few things that would apply. More broadly, obviously, we do have a leasing policy that identifies the categories of tenants and the types of land that they should use. Operationally, though, what the team would typically do when there is a new lease coming up for renewal, or an existing lease coming up for renewal is probably a better way to put it, is we would firstly look at the performance of the tenant. So have they had any issues with us? How are they maintaining their property? General property management type questions. Secondly, we would also check within administration if there's any other things coming that we should have been aware of, and maybe as a property services team we don't necessarily know. So that might be if in a facility, if there's changes coming to it, or if it's a park, there's a new development coming. We did that in this case. Internally, the view was that continuing with the tenancy was fine, both in terms of the performance of the tenant and in terms of the ongoing use of this site. The length of term proposed was seen as acceptable.
Thank you, Mr Greer. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. My question is in regards to the maintenance and cleaning fee, and I know Deputy Mayor Miles has asked this on numerous occasions in the past. Have we got a standard approach of how we're doing these maintenance fees? So I note that the last set of leases at the end of last year were in regards to leasees paying a fee to the city for the city to then conduct the compliance. But then for this one, it's the leasee's responsibility, but they must use city-approved contractors and there's no fee. So I'm just confused as to the approach that the property services team is applying for these. I note that you're obviously looking at the previous lease and saying what's happening. I just note that there could be a disadvantage for groups if the same approach or same methodology is not being applied. So I'm just wanting to know, obviously using city-approved contractors could be a cost burden for clubs, but locking them into this for their duration could have a disadvantage. I'm just wanting to know a bit more around how your team's actually applying that.
Mr Greer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Wright. This lease, the previous lease, was actually quite an interesting case. When it was negotiated, the policy position at the time was that for community and sporting tenants, a maintenance fee was required. It was the position under the leasing policy, in that sort of 2020, 2021 period. What we were finding, though, was that on sites that were, if not a ground lease, certainly similar to a ground lease where a tenant had had a lot of control and operation of the site over the years, fully bringing in a city maintenance regime wasn't necessarily practical and was resulting in a lot of pushback and a lot of negotiation going on for long periods with the lease. So what we'd come to with putting this previous lease to council was a compromise position where we still wanted a level of line of sight. We wanted to know that they were using appropriate contractors and, keeping a record of doing so, but then letting them run it themselves beyond that. That has since become a position in the leasing policy. If you recall, when it was last reviewed a few years ago, that's now there. So starting point negotiations is we would seek to have a maintenance fee and have more city control. The fallback that the policy allows is something a lot like this. In this case, the club, to our understanding, has been comfortable using, contractors that the city has approved. Again, it just means that we have some understanding that suitable people are doing the job, even if it's the club themselves that are procuring them.
Thank you, Mr Greer. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor. Just my last question. Just in regards to the approach from the city to community groups during negotiations, I'm just curious to understand a bit more around how the city does approach community groups. I know from my record with some of the community groups in my ward, particularly a lot of them don't have legal experience. They're not able to understand these leases and those types of things. So I'm just wanting to know, has your team received training in terms of dealing with the sensitivities around dealing with community groups who don't necessarily understand that? Are they being given the options of, if they want to go and seek legal advice, to review all that beforehand? Are they being told all the options? Because from my understanding, and I've, just using the Horse and Pony Club as an example, at the time they were unsure. They went through the process. The staff were fantastic at dealing with them, but they weren't told all the options, or that there was certain aspects they could push back or couldn't push back. And it was sort of, this is what it is and this is what they need to walk forward through. So I'm just curious to know the approach. I know through my experience working with you, Mr. Greer, it's been fantastic, and when you've had to intervene, it's been a positive result. But I'm just wanting to know, is that experience consistent across the board with all other community groups? Because I know a lot of them, we don't find out until after councils approve the lease, that there are then issues that come up in regards to the maintenance fee, or, it's ending up draining the community group's bank account. So I'm just wanting to understand what's your team's approach at the moment in regards to the lease negotiation phase.
Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question and for the interest in that issue. I'm going to give a number of answers that are really general, so they're not specifically about this particular report, so I should be clear on that. The first one is my observation, certainly from my own contact with tenants and from my team and how they approach tenants, is that they would certainly be making the tenants aware of the opportunity to get legal advice. Whether a party decides to do so or not, that's their call. But to my understanding, there are often pro bono options. Lawyers have targets around pro bono that they try and achieve. So there are people out in the private sector that would often, generously give their time to supporting clubs, and I've seen that in a number of cases with tenants we deal with. So general position would be yes, we do. Provide that support and make them aware of that. And I would extend that to not just legal advice, but financial advice. If you're entering in a lease, there's financial implications. If it doesn't go right, it's a risk for you. You need to understand all of that. In terms of tenants themselves, there's probably two other challenges I'd observe that, not necessarily in the case you've given, but would cause issues from time to time. One is community and sporting groups, they're volunteer-led. Often their committees turn over every 1 to 2 years, depending on their constitution, depending on their stability. Sometimes that can mean that new people come in who are running it, who maybe don't have the continuity in the organisational memory of what the old lease looked like versus the new lease. That can be challenging for the group. If I am aware of that, I would always encourage the group to reach out and work with our team. The second one, in terms of knowing what a group could push back on, that probably comes down to also understanding the landlord-tenant dynamic. My observation, having worked in private sector before here, is some commercial landlords have very little flexibility in terms of what they do, and the city generally is actually quite flexible. Often where we have challenges is where a volunteer on a community and sporting group will bring their private sector experience. Maybe they work for a corporate or a mining company, and they will approach negotiations with a quite, frankly, hard-nosed way. That will be challenging. Fortunately, that's very rare. Most of the time, it's a good collaboration because the parties, us and the tenants, recognise it's a relationship that goes forward. As in the case of trotting, it's been there for a long time and hopefully continues.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. Any other questions, councillors? If there are no other questions, thank you. That's the end of corporate finance. We now go to legal and governance, and Ms Coles will be responding to these questions. And Ms Iliff. Ms Coles, are there any items on the agenda that you wish to speak to this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. There's 3 reports on the agenda from Legal and Governance. We don't propose to introduce any of the reports, but happy to take questions.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on item 4.9, Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee Terms of Reference? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor, and I note this has gone through AREC committee and been endorsed already, and you've sort of inferred it in the statutory compliance section of the report. The local government reforms that have been introduced and passed through Parliament, been assented, all of them are now in effect, and this terms of reference, to the best of our knowledge, is compliant with all of that legislative requirement. So there's no anticipation that we would need to go back and do another review of the terms of reference soon at this stage. Is that correct?
Ms Coles.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor. The terms of reference as they're currently drafted are in line with the changes that have been made to the reform, so there shouldn't be any requirement to review the terms of reference for that reason. However, we do know that we have the risk management project on foot at the moment, so there could be changes that come out of that.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
Thank you. This committee looks after audit and risk, so this question is involving risk, I guess. How will the Audit and Risk Committee maintain oversight of government's risks linked to the CEO's KPIs, considering that the CEO's KPIs is now under a separate committee? Thank you.
Ms Coles.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Berry. Yes, the Council made the decision to establish the CEO Performance Review Committee, and that committee has taken on the responsibility of the quarterly corporate report that goes to the committee, together with the report in relation to the CEO's KPIs. But any of those reports that go to the CEO Performance Review Committee will still come up through Council, and under the legislation, it's still Council's responsibility for the CEO performance review and the KPIs.
Thank you, Ms Coles. Any other questions? If there are no other questions on item 4.9, we now go to item 4.10, which is amendment to delegations 1.120, disposing of property or land by lease or licence, and 1.123, defer grants, discounts, waive or write-off of debts. Do I have any questions on this item, councillors? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. Given our current deficit and financial position, the proposal does concern me. So what I'd like to know is what reporting Council will receive each time this delegation is used, and how will Council know what the cumulative impacts of this waivers and write-offs will be? Thank you.
Ms Coles.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Barry, and through you, Mayor. So the delegation has a condition on it that any write-off over $5,000 is reported to the Audit and Risk Committee. So the Audit and Risk Committee will have the oversight, and then it would be for the Audit and Risk Committee to decide whether that's then put through to, that report then goes through to Council for oversight as well. And those reports come through the financial team as well.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Coetzee.
How many times in the last year did a write-off between 10 and 50,000 came to council?
Ms Coles.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Coetzee. So there hasn't been any in the past 12 months, but the reason to review this delegation is that we've had one specifically, which is also in the agenda for discussion in the confidential side of the agenda. This is more a commercial decision for the city. Now we're moving into more of that commercial property area, because often when you are negotiating outcomes from commercial properties, if you've got tenants that are leaving, there's not enough time to bring a matter to council when you're in that negotiation phase, and then there's the cost to actually call a special council meeting. So that's why we're proposing to increase it to the 50,000.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item, councillors? If there are no other questions on this, we now go to item 4.11, enterprise risk management update. Do we have any questions on that item, councillors? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I ask how much the consultant fees are liable to be? And my second question is, why is the risk still only rated as medium if multiple major government documents have been delayed? Thank you.
Ms Coles.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Berry. I will have to take on notice for the consultant fees. And at the moment, we are still rating the risk as medium, because the managers are still managing the risk and we're still doing the BAU in the background. So we don't feel that it's any higher risk to the organisation.
Thank you, Ms Coles. Any other questions on item 4.11? If there are no questions on item 4.11, item 5, motions on notice, I have none as yet. Oh, wow. Councillor Rowe.
I just want to foreshadow, Mayor, that I'll be moving a motion on notice in relation to pedestrian access ways.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Any other motions on notice? If there are none, I now go to item 6, late reports, 6.1, workforce plan, which I think will be coming to us later. 6.2, ordinary council meetings and forums council policy exemption request, which will come at the ordinary council meeting. And I just move that the agenda briefing move into confidential session to discuss items 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6 and 7.7 under the terms of the Local Government Act 1995, Section 5, 23(2). Thank you. As read, do we have any questions on item 7.1, councillors? We shouldn't be on air. We are in confidential at the moment, ladies. I'm afraid. So we're going back on air at 20:49. So we're now back on air. Item 8, the date of the next meeting. The next ordinary council meeting has been scheduled for 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 23rd of June 2026, to be held at Council Chamber, Level 1 Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road, Wanneroo. Item 9, closure. Thank you for your attendance, and I now declare the council briefing meeting closed at 20:50.